The New Year in Indonesia is usually a time of joy, fireworks, and hope. Across the archipelago, families gather to share meals, exchange wishes, and look forward to new beginnings. The night sky over Jakarta bursts with color, and the air is filled with laughter and anticipation for what lies ahead. But as 2026 began, Sumatra faced devastation instead of celebration. Torrential rains swept through the region, turning streets into rivers and homes into islands. The usual sounds of festivity were replaced by the roar of rushing water and the cries of those seeking safety. While much of the country prepared for festivities, relentless rains in Aceh, North Sumatra, and West Sumatra triggered catastrophic floods and landslides. Emergency workers raced against time, battling dangerous conditions to reach those trapped by rising waters and shifting earth. Homes were swept away, lives lost, and entire communities left in ruins. Families mourned loved ones, and neighbors clung to each other for support amid the debris. The scale of destruction was overwhelming, leaving many with nothing but the clothes on their backs. The tragedy cast a somber shadow over the nation, confronting President Prabowo Subianto and Vice President Gibran Rakabuming Raka with an immediate test of leadership. The government was called to act swiftly, coordinating rescue efforts and providing aid to the hardest-hit areas. President Prabowo chose to leave the comfort of the capital and stand with the victims, showing that true leadership means presence and empathy. He listened to survivors' stories, offered comfort, and promised that no one would be left behind in the recovery. Meanwhile, Vice President Gibran focused on the nation's future, overseeing progress in the new capital, Nusantara. His attention to long-term development signaled hope that Indonesia could rebuild stronger, even as it faced immediate hardship. Their actions reflected a government balancing urgent relief with long-term vision. As aid flowed to Sumatra, plans for resilient infrastructure and safer communities took shape, aiming to protect against future disasters. This new year was not about celebration, but about solidarity and decisive action. Across Indonesia, people came together, volunteers, officials, and neighbors, proving that even in the darkest times, unity and compassion can light the way forward. The disaster in Sumatra was relentless, beginning in late November 2025, with torrential rains that overwhelmed rivers and hillsides. Floods and landslides devastated Aceh, North Sumatra, and West Sumatra, leaving over 1,000 dead and many more missing. Villages were submerged, roads and bridges destroyed, and farmlands ruined, daily life ground to a halt. Thousands were forced into evacuation shelters, cut off from aid by damaged infrastructure. The government declared a state of emergency, mobilizing military, police, and volunteers for rescue and relief. The scale of destruction demanded a massive, coordinated response. Recovery would require not just resources, but unwavering political will. The path ahead was daunting, but the nation's resolve was clear. For Sumatra, survival and rebuilding became the new year's urgent mission. President Prabowo made a bold choice: to spend New Year's Eve with those suffering in Sumatra, not in Jakarta. His visit was more than symbolic. It was a hands-on commitment to the people. The president's presence in the disaster zone cut through bureaucracy and boosted morale among victims and responders. Treacherous weather forced the cancellation of his trip to Aceh, but he pressed on to North Sumatra, reaching devastated villages like Batu Hula. There, he witnessed the destruction firsthand, listened to survivors, and assessed urgent needs. His visit sent a clear message. The government was fully engaged and the people were not forgotten. Even nature's obstacles could not deter his resolve. This was leadership defined by empathy and action. The president's journey marked the beginning of a direct, compassionate response. In North Sumatra, President Prabowo chose not to address the nation from behind a podium or through distant speeches, but instead stood shoulder to shoulder with the people most affected by disaster. He walked through muddy streets, sat among villagers, and listened to their stories firsthand, showing a leader's willingness to be present in the hardest moments. With sincerity, he promised, "Your president will never leave you." These words were not just a pledge, but a reassurance that in times of crisis, leadership means standing by the people, no matter how difficult the circumstances. His message brought comfort and a sense of unity, reminding survivors that they were not facing their struggles alone. The president's presence offered hope, and his words became a source of strength for those who had lost so much. He spoke about resilience, urging everyone to support one another and to see recovery as a journey they would take together. He emphasized that rebuilding would require not just government help, but the spirit of togetherness that defines Indonesia. Prabowo listened intently to stories of loss, heartbreak, and survival, validating both the pain and the remarkable strength of the community. He acknowledged the hardships, but also celebrated the courage and determination of those affected. By personally distributing aid and offering comfort, he transformed government assistance into a deeply human connection. His actions embodied the Indonesian value of gotong royong, mutual cooperation and solidarity in the face of adversity. The president's visit was more than a formal obligation. It was a heartfelt demonstration of solidarity and empathy, showing that true leadership means being present when it matters most. He encouraged neighbors to look out for one another, to rebuild not just homes, but the bonds of community, and to draw strength from working side by side. By listening, comforting, and standing with the victims, he turned the government's response from a distant policy into an act of genuine compassion and care. In moments of crisis, he reminded the nation that unity and empathy are Indonesia's greatest strengths, and that together, no challenge is insurmountable. Through his actions and words, President Prabowo inspired hope amid devastation, showing that leadership is about compassion, presence, and the unwavering promise to never leave anyone behind. President Prabowo's visit accelerated real action, rebuilding bridges, homes, and hope. He inspected a newly built Bailey Bridge, restoring vital access for aid and reconnecting isolated communities. The government launched rapid construction of temporary housing, aiming to give families dignity and privacy by January 2026. Efforts extended to clearing roads, restoring power, and ensuring clean water and food supplies. Prabowo's presence energized local leaders and disaster teams, cutting through red tape to speed up relief. He called for nationwide support, insisting on transparency and accountability in aid distribution. The response was comprehensive: immediate relief, infrastructure repair, and a vision for fair recovery. The message was clear: rebuilding would be swift, coordinated, and just. President Prabowo showed humility, apologizing for not reaching every disaster site, an honest admission of the crisis's vast scale. His apology was not weakness, but respect for those still waiting for help. He promised continued visits and hands-on engagement as conditions allowed. This commitment reassured isolated communities that they were not forgotten. When faced with criticism, Prabowo responded calmly, focusing on unity and the urgent needs of victims. He refused to be distracted by politics, prioritizing compassion and action. His leadership was defined by empathy, transparency, and a refusal to let ego overshadow the nation's pain. The president's approach built trust and hope in a time of uncertainty. In crisis, he chose humility and service over image. The Sumatra disaster raised fears about its impact on Indonesia's national budget and development plans. The government moved quickly to assure the public disaster relief would not derail key programs for 2026. Fiscal discipline and budget savings created a buffer for emergency spending. Additional funds would come from better management of state assets and stricter law enforcement, not new taxes. Revenue from palm plantations, anti-smuggling efforts, and mining royalties would help cover reconstruction costs. This strategy balanced immediate crisis response with long-term national goals. The message: Indonesia could rebuild Sumatra without sacrificing its future. As Prabowo led relief in Sumatra, Vice President Gibran focused on Nusantara, the nation's future capital. Gibran spent the new year in East Kalimantan, overseeing construction and meeting with project leaders. The site buzzed with visitors, reflecting growing public excitement and ownership of the new city. Gibran's hands-on approach ensured the project stayed on track, even during a national crisis. His presence signaled that Indonesia's long-term vision would not be sidelined. The government demonstrated it could address urgent needs and build for the future simultaneously. Nusantara's progress offered hope and renewal, even as the nation mourned. The dual focus of the country's leaders showed effective, forward-looking governance. From the heart of disaster, where devastation once seemed insurmountable, a new sense of purpose began to emerge. The scars left behind by nature's fury became a powerful reminder of both our vulnerability and our strength as a nation. President Prabowo delivered a New Year message grounded in hard truth and hope, standing among those most affected. His words resonated deeply, acknowledging the pain and loss, but also the courage and unity that surfaced in the aftermath. He called for a renewed respect for nature, urging every Indonesian to recognize the land's fragility and the urgent need to protect it. The president emphasized that our forests, rivers, and coastlines are not just resources, but lifelines for our people. Linking environmental care to national survival, he reminded us that the health of our environment is inseparable from the well-being of our communities and the prosperity of our nation. The president urged Indonesians to see the disaster as a lesson, an opportunity to reflect on our relationship with nature and to change our ways for the better. He stressed that development must not come at the cost of ecological balance, warning that unchecked progress could lead to even greater tragedies in the future. He framed environmental stewardship as a patriotic duty, calling on citizens to take pride in protecting Indonesia's natural heritage and to see conservation as an act of national service. This responsibility, he said, is vital for protecting future generations, ensuring that children and grandchildren inherit a land that is healthy, vibrant, and full of promise. Prabowo's message was also a call for unity, urging all Indonesians to come together regardless of background, faith, or region. He encouraged everyone to support Sumatra and embody the spirit of gotong royong, mutual cooperation, reminding us that our greatest strength lies in our willingness to help one another. Despite sorrow, he expressed confidence in the nation's resilience and ability to rebuild, highlighting the determination and compassion shown by ordinary Indonesians in times of crisis. The president looked to 2026 with determined optimism, envisioning a future where Indonesia stands stronger, wiser, and more united than ever before. He believes Indonesia will emerge from these challenges not only healed, but transformed, ready to face whatever comes next, together. His words offered a vision of hope, compassion, and shared responsibility, inspiring Indonesians to care for one another and for the land they call home. As the sun rises on a new year, the promise of a brighter, more conscious future for all Indonesians feels within reach, built on unity, respect for nature, and the enduring spirit of the people.